Today's story from 2 Samuel is highly unusual, if not unprecedented, in ancient literature. It's unusual because ancient literature almost never criticizes powerful or successful male leaders within its own community. Yet here we have Israel willingly critiquing its most famous king. This highlights our ancestors' commitment to moral values and a willingness to try to tell the truth. It would be easier for me to ignore this passage and preach on the gospel today. But I think we at St. Andrew's want to emulate our ancestors by being willing to go there. Sexism and gender-based violence are pervasive today, as they were in those ancient times. And I believe that to be an authentic Jesus community, we have to be honest about this. Because where else will this conversation happen, really, if it's not happening here? As a reminder, some context for this story. David was an Israelite shepherd who rose from obscurity to power, eventually becoming king of Israel. Our passage today begins at the height of David's political and military success. He's wealthy, safe, and in full control of his kingdom. So much so that he no longer goes out to fight with his armies. Rather, he stays securely on the rooftop of his palace, ordering others to die for him from his place of privilege. It's from this geographical and political high ground that David sees Bathsheba and connives to assault her. An essential component of this story is that Bathsheba is essentially silenced throughout it. We do not know what she is thinking, and she barely speaks during the events. Or perhaps she did speak, but the writer chose not to record it. The author's choice to fill the story with David's words and omit Bathsheba's might have been a way to highlight the injustice of the entire situation. An essential part of Christian practice is to center marginalized voices. So, I don't know about you, but I want to hear from Bathsheba. And a way that we can do that is to turn to a female commentator on the story. Reverend Will Gaffney is an African-American Episcopal priest and female interpreter. And I want to invite us to listen to a few paragraphs of her interpretation of this story. Quote, "The text says that Bathsheba is a beautiful woman. This is not a neutral statement in praise of her. Rather, though David will be held accountable for his sin against her, the text insinuates that her beauty is partially to blame. But the rooftop location is not salacious, it is neutral. David's ability to view her body is attributed to the size and the location of the palace, not due to any temptation on Bathsheba's part. She is the object of David's vision and his lust to acquire and dominate. Rape is not about sexual desire. I read this encounter as rape. When David sends for Bathsheba, she does not have the option to refuse his invitation. To come when beckoned by the king does not imply consent. I argue that Bathsheba's going with David's soldiers on her own 2 feet should in no way be read as consent, but rather as her holding on to a shred of dignity by not being dragged or carried out. Later, once David has had Bathsheba's husband killed, he takes her as one of his wives. Using my sanctified womanist imagination, I hear Bathsheba confronting David and demanding the respect she is due. I hear her speak, "You are not going to shut me away. You stole the life I had with my husband in the sight of God. You stole our future and you stole our children. I can't get that back, but I can have your children and the security that comes with them. I will be the mother of kings." End quote. This is an effort for us to hear from the survivor Bathsheba through the voice of a modern female interpreter. And I thought about stopping here and spending the rest of the sermon, the whole message, recovering Bathsheba's voice. From another angle, honestly, I thought I might not even preach this passage. Like, it's not right for me to try to preach this passage being a male myself. We don't need more men explaining to women how to tell their own stories. But I am preaching on this story because men do have a part to play in this conversation, and it's a critical part. Because the harassment and assault of women and LGBTQ folks by men isn't something that women and queer folks need to fix. Rather, it's something that men need to fix. It's our work to do. At least it's my work to do. And so, having started the message by centering women's voices, I want to pivot and pursue this second set of questions. What was happening with David that made him act this way? Or put another way, what is happening with men in America that leads some of us to act in ways that are dominating, harassing, disrespectful? I want to offer 3 factors that I believe are contributing to poor male mental health and causing men to harm people around them. Of course, there are exceptions to these variables. They don't apply in every situation. And then there are also additional factors that I'm going to miss, that I'm not going to have time to name. But these 3 that I want to name come from a combination of research and my personal experience working with young men in ministry and being a man in this culture myself. The first is this: social media and the internet breeding isolation and despair. We have now had 15 years of data that study the impact of smartphones and social media on the human brain. We know that across all genders, the rates of anxiety, depression, self-harm, and suicide have skyrocketed since 2010, and it is very likely that social media is a prime cause of this trend. For boys and young men in particular, the thousands of hours spent on gaming websites, social media, and chat spaces like Twitter replace them having valuable time when these males should be interacting in real-world community. The phone replaces learning that happens when youth play, negotiate conflict, take healthy risks, and collaborate together in person. This phone-based childhood often produces young men who might have lower emotional intelligence, fragmented attention, an inability to relate to people in real time, or a sense of loneliness or despair. Second variable, pornography as sexual education. The advent of smartphones put the whole internet in the hands of many young people, giving many young men access to unlimited pornography at a critical time in their brain development. Tech companies make billions of dollars by addicting young men to websites that traffic in pornography. Pornography is a huge and complicated topic that could be a whole 6-week sermon series in itself, right? So I acknowledge that. And to be clear, we Christians believe that sex is a good gift from God, that our bodies are a gift from God, that desire is a gift from God. Rather, what we're fighting against in pornography is the objectification of other human beings for sexual pleasure or financial profit, right? There's a difference between those. So, broadly speaking, I believe that many men's exposure to unlimited pornography through smartphones has rewired their brains, giving them unrealistic understandings of sexual intimacy, incentivizing the objectification of human beings, and robbing them from gaining real-world romantic experiences, where they have to learn things like the skill of communication, consent, and compromise in flesh and blood relationships. King David's assault on Bathsheba is exactly the kind of behavior that porn trains the male mind for. It teaches them that you see what you want, you objectify another human being, and you use a person non-consensually for your own gain. I'm going to say that again. King David's assault on Bathsheba is exactly the kind of behavior that porn trains the male mind for. The sexual education of our young people, and really of our adults, should be happening in real time in trusting and safe intergenerational relationships. But right now, pornography is one of the primary sexual educators of boys and men in our culture. Third variable, toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity refers to a set of gender expectations placed upon male-identifying people. This happens in families, it happens in media, it happens in government. It's everywhere. In my experience, a few of these expectations include the belief that to be a man means you should not show emotional vulnerability, the belief that to be a man you must be attracted exclusively to women, and the belief that to be a man you must pursue and objectify women. And these beliefs are sometimes even perpetuated in Christian churches, where religious language is used to discourage men's vulnerability or to teach that to be a Christian man means to be domineering. I'm sure you've encountered that before. The effect of being formed into toxic masculinity has serious consequences for all of us. In my own work in campus ministry, I consistently hear young men going through this similar range of experiences. Some boys talk about being told to man up by their parents, or being teased and called weak, or much more vulgar things by teammates when they're injured in athletics. Many talk about how all this pressure came to a head for them during the isolation of the COVID lockdown, like 2 years of being alone, right? And I will never forget how one particular student described this pain to me about a year ago. He said, "It feels like I have a volcano inside me, and I've had to hide it inside of a safe, inside of another safe." Wow. When he said that to me, I thought, that's toxic masculinity. What does it mean that some young men are expected to bottle up all of their struggles and then given few tools or community to process those in healthy ways? This is speculative, but I wonder if toxic masculinity is related to the fact that 98% of mass shootings since 1966 in America have been perpetrated by men. What I'm absolutely not saying here is that men are bad and women are good, right? We are all made in the image of God. That's the gospel. Rather, I'm trying to compassionately understand what in our cultures is malforming men in ways that are contributing them to act in ways that are dominating, right? I'm just trying to understand that. Because when we do not create places for people to transform their pain, people will transmit their pain onto others. And for me, this is where the gospel comes in. This is why the inbreaking of the good news of Jesus Christ matters today. Everything I've named in this sermon that's harming women, that's harming queer folks, and that's harming men in the process. The Christian community is meant to be an antidote to all of those harms. When we truly emulate Jesus' life and his practices, our community is a concrete response to these evils. Jesus was humble. He refused to coerce or dominate other people. He lifted up and centered the voices of vulnerable people. He respected women and saw them as leaders. And when Jesus used his power, he did so to challenge injustice and disrupt abuse. Likewise, we, the church, are meant to be Jesus' witnesses. In a social media culture that isolates people and addicts them for profit, we offer real embodied communities of care. In a pornographic culture that encourages the objectification of others, Jesus offers a different way of being human that is gentle, that is consensual, that is reciprocal. In a culture that offers violence as a response to despair, we offer love and hope that comes through nonviolence. In shared worship, in shared meals, in shared living, in shared action together. Friends, we faced some hard truths in this text today and talked about some hard truths that are happening in our world. But Jesus Christ absolutely came to show us a better way and to inaugurate this very community. This is a place where we say no to loneliness and despair. This is a place where we are trained in love a better way with God's help. Let us continue in that way. Amen.